Okay, so we are going to be starting on my eyeshadow palette collection that I have here at the Caravan. Now, I have basically ripped my bedroom apart to do this, and I'm going home tomorrow, so I am running out of time to get this done. So I'm going to be, there's a lot of palettes here, so I'm going to be going through them as quickly as possible. Okay, I'm going to be starting with my Makeup Academy palettes, and I've talked many times about how much I absolutely love the Makeup Academy eyeshadow formula. So I've got two odds. I've got the Nocturnal palette, which is in this cardboard packaging, and I've heard it's a different formula to the one in the like clear plastic packaging, but this just really spoke to me. It's such a like autumnal, like Halloweeny autumn type of palette. It really does remind me a little bit of the vibes that I get from the Natasha Denona Metropolis palette. So really excited to get to use this. Can't believe I haven't used it yet, but yeah, I absolutely love the way this one looks, and you've got this beautiful like duochrome here as well. Then I have the Ultimate Obsession palette. This is an all matte eyeshadow palette, which I have a few of these like higher end at home, and I don't think you can go wrong with an all matte palette. They're so easy to create super basic looks with, but also super glam. You know, you can go super dark and smoky with these, add a single shadow over the top, or just leave it matte. Again, I haven't got round to using this one yet, but this is a really beautiful palette, and the reviews that I've seen and the demos I've seen with it, the shadows look absolutely beautifully pigmented. Then we have the ones I am the most familiar with. These are their £6 palettes. So this is the Elysium Remastered palette. I'm not going to talk too much about this one, as I have done a look using this one. Beautiful smoky kind of nude palette with some really interesting shimmers. I absolutely loved the look that I got out of that. Then another newer one to me, this is the Undressed palette. I haven't got round to using this one either yet, but this one is on the top of my list to do my next look with. I think this is absolutely stunning. Then I picked this one up while I was here at the Caravan. This is one of their newest ones. This is the Virtual Glow eyeshadow collection, and again, this is, you know, got some really interesting sort of shimmers in here, these like marbled ones, and you've got your duochrome. I think these are stunning. Then this one reminds me so much of Urban Decay Naked Heat. This is the Firestorm palette, but again, you've got some really interesting shimmers in here. For £6 with these palettes, I really don't think you can go wrong. This is the Blush Nudes palette. I did a look with this one and absolutely love it. I think it's absolutely stunning. The Soft Nudes I've used a few times, and I've loved every look that I've got out of it. And then finally, the Illusionist. This was the first of these palettes that I actually tried. And when I very first used it, I found that the shadows didn't last very long on me. But since then, with this palette and all the others I've used, I've not had that issue since. I like using the e.l.f. No Budge shadow sticks as a base for these. Also, like the Maybelline and the Revlon cream shadows, I like using those as a base with these eyeshadows. And the shimmer formula in these is just stunning. You've got like a variation of formulas. You have ones that are more like smooth satins, and then these that are like a more chunky, more like foily kind of a texture. Really beautiful. Those are all my Makeup Academy palettes. Then I have one lone palette from W7. This is the Moonglade eyeshadow palette. Another one I was hoping to get to do a look with this time, but I just ran out of time. I've filmed so much while I've been here, and I've probably worn makeup more times this month than I have for a very long time, but I still haven't got round to using all of these beautiful palettes. And it's like, when I come here, it's like having a whole brand new makeup collection to play with, because I don't get access to it 24/7. And I wanted to use all these palettes, but I just didn't have the time. This is obviously a dupe of the Anastasia Beverly Hills Nouveau palette. This looks super pretty. Me and my mum bought one each for ourselves when we were here I think it was perhaps last year now. But yeah, really stunning. Haven't tried the W7 eyeshadow formula, so I'm not really sure how it performs or anything. Then I have one higher end palette here. This is the Too Faced Sweet Peach palette. I've used this so many times. This was given to me by my mum. It still smells like peaches. It still performs absolutely beautifully. And yeah, it's one that I don't think you can go wrong with. You can get such beautiful, easy, everyday, soft looks, but then you've got this side of the palette where you can really amp it up and get something quite dark and smoky. Then I have one Colourpop palette here. This is the Through My Eyes palette, which was the collab with I Love Sarai. And this is a beautiful, very summery palette, but I also think it's a good transition into autumn with these like coppery tones and these deep like emerald greens. Really beautiful palette, and a colour story that I don't think you see very often. Again, with this palette I get sort of a similar vibe to like my Natasha Denona Metropolis palette. I could probably get sort of a similar look out of this that I would get from that palette, and the Colourpop formula is just really reliable. So my e.l.f. bite-size palettes, I gave one to my mum. I gave the one from the Mint Melt collection to my mum, so I have left the hot jalapeno, the pumpkin pie, rose water, truffle, cream and sugar. This is the one that I've probably got the most use out of, and the Berry Bad palette. And I absolutely love using these as like companion palettes. So if, for instance, I'm using one of my I Heart Revolution palettes that has majority shimmers and satins, I will pull one of these out to use the mattes. I often use the cream and sugar one for the lid setting shade, and this one for in the inner corner, and then I'll use this one as like a smoky liner. And they're a really great formula. They're so cheap, but they are such a great formula of eyeshadow. Okay, and now we are starting on Makeup Revolution. So I have 4 of the Bratz eyeshadow palettes. So I have 3 from the original collection and then 1 from the Christmas release. I only picked up the ones where the colour story spoke to me. I didn't bother getting like the whole collection. But the one that I've used in a video is the Yasmin palette. This is a lovely like mauvey toned palette, and it has like the bottom row, you've got like, I think these are you're supposed to be able to use them like as face highlighters, but these are sort of like a very blinding sort of a shimmer formula, and I really liked the look that I got out of this palette, and the formula was really nice. Then we've got the Sacha palette. This one, I think the colour story of this one is really fun and different. You know, having these like very bright punchy oranges, and then these like beautiful rich sapphire blues. I think, again, it's a colour story that you don't see all that often. This was another one that I was hoping to be able to do a look with this time, but too many eyeshadow palettes and not enough days. And then the Jade palette, again, really different kind of a colour story with the greys, the pinks and the greens. I think it's really unique. And I think the greens are different. They're more of like a true green, a saturated green, rather than like a foresty green. And then speaking of greens, we've got the Sacha palette. This was the Christmas Sacha palette. And this one is those beautiful green tones. And this gives me kind of Natasha Denona Yucca palette vibes. It's that sort of like grungy, earthy greens. Since I've been doing my looks on a budget videos here, every palette that I look at, I sort of think, what kind of a vibe does it give me compared to like the higher end palettes I have at home? And I'm seeing comparisons everywhere. I do have a couple of odds, and this is one of them. So this is the I Heart Revolution Hidden Treasure palette. And I just think this is so beautiful for like this time of year, for like the Burr months. You know, you've got those very rich jewel tones. It's majority shimmers, but you've got a good selection of basic mattes and one sort of purpley one. Again, I sound like a broken record. This was another one that I was hoping to get to use this time, but just didn't get round to it. We'll do these ones first. So the first one here is the I Heart Revolution Rainbow Sprinkles palette, and this is pretty much an all satin palette. This is one that I like using as a companion palette with one of the e.l.f. Bite Size palettes, or I've got an all matte chocolate bar palette as well. If I want just a fun pop of colour on the lid, this is a great one to reach for. These aren't super shiny in your face shimmers, they are that more satiny formula, but with the right kind of look, I still think it can look really beautiful, and it's one I've reached for quite a few times. Another one I've reached for quite a few times is the Chocolate Gingerbread palette. This is stunning for, again, this time of year, for the Burr months, definitely the autumn. And again, this is one that I've used quite a few times. I've used it whilst I've been here this time. I absolutely loved the look that I got out of it. It has only got a few mattes in here, but some of these shades, like this shade Cookies and the black Molasses and Treacle, they're a matte with like a sparkle running through them. So if you tap off the brush, they do act like a matte. And I used Cookies and Molasses as mattes in the look that I did this time, and it worked really, really beautiful. Some of these shimmers are absolutely stunning. They're so impactful, and I just love this colour story. Another colour story I absolutely love is the Toffee Hazelnut. This was like a limited edition. It was in like a hamper or something. I've got most of mine off either the Makeup Revolution website or via Vinted, a reselling site. And a lot of these I've only paid a couple of quid for, so some absolute bargains. I think this palette is just so stunning, and I think these shimmers look incredible, like truffles, chewy, corn syrup and sticky toffee look like absolutely stunning, like foily shimmers. And I also like the fact that there's a good variety in here, like there's a good balance between mattes and shimmers, where I find a lot of the I Heart Revolution palettes, there's an overabundance of shimmers. Another favourite that I ended up buying 3 of. The first one I ordered from Vinted came absolutely destroyed. It hadn't been packed very well, and most of the shades were just dust. So I ordered another one for myself. And then another one I ended up getting because it came in a bundle with some others that I was buying, and I basically got it for free. So I've got one and my mum's got one and the garbage got the other one. But this is the Iced Latte palette, and this again was a palette that was, you couldn't buy like on its own. It was in a like Christmas hamper set, and I think this is absolutely stunning. I wore this on like my first like Teams video call when I got that job last year. So this one will always sort of hold a bit of a special place in my heart, because even though that job didn't work out, it was something that I worked very hard for and I did for myself. And I really loved the look that I came up with. It was a nice purple, like smoky kind of a look, and it was really, really pretty. And again, some of these shimmers in here are absolutely stunning. Then we have another all shimmer palette. This is the Honey palette. I think this is stunning. The shades in here are really different. I just think for an all shimmer palette, it's a really unique colour story. And again, I love using this as like a companion palette. So say a perfect kind of a look for me would be the e.l.f. Bite Size Pumpkin Pie palette, but then using some of the shimmers out of here. Some are more foily than others, some are more of a satin, but they are really beautiful. Then we've got, this one kind of blew me away actually. This is the Frozen Raspberry palette, and I did a look with this last year before Christmas when we were here, and I really wasn't expecting much from this palette because it's not a colour story that really speaks to me, but the look that I came out with was so pretty. I felt so good in it. I used like these like more pinky berry tones, and I just absolutely love the look. I felt, like I say, I felt so pretty in it. And yeah, it just, it smells like berries. It's beautiful. And then this is another one that I really didn't expect to love as much as I did when I used it. This is the Cotton Candy palette, and this is such a soft, like cool toned, neutral kind of a palette. And the looks that you're going to get, you're not going to get much depth from this, but the looks are super soft and pretty. And again, the look that I got when I used this palette kind of shocked me how much I loved it. Not a colour story I have a lot of like this. And yeah, I just think it's really pretty. And these are the last of my full size chocolate bar palettes. So one that I used in like my first video here this time is the macarons palette, and I loved this. Again, I think this colour story is really different. It's really unique. I think that's what Makeup Revolution and I Heart Revolution was so good at, like the colour stories that they were coming out with. Although some of them seemed like they'd just thrown a bunch of colours in a palette and called it done, I think some of the palettes that they came out with, the colour stories were just really unique and different, and not many people were doing that at the time. And I really like this. Again, it's quite a soft palette, but you have got some quite intense shades if you want to go in that direction. And these shimmers were really beautiful. This one, Nom Nom, kind of blew me away. Like you can see in the video that I wanted sort of a soft, like ethereal look, and I got much more of an impact than I expected. And then the palette that I've probably used the most is the Lemon Meringue palette. This one I just find so easy to use, and every look I do with it I love. You know, I've got a bunch of neutral mattes in here, but I've got a bit of colour as well. The shimmers are the types of shimmers that I like to wear, like the golds and the bronzes. And again, I've used this a lot with the e.l.f. bite-sized palettes like pumpkin pie and cream and sugar and that. Even though they've got similar tones, they just work really well with this palette. Like the pale shimmer out of the cream and sugar is a perfect companion for this palette because you haven't really got an inner corner shade. And yeah, I've done so many looks with this, and every one of them I've really enjoyed. This was the palette that I tended to wear for work. And then another one that really shocked me how much I liked it, this is the Ruby Cocoa Crumble. And again, it's like the Frozen Berry palette. It's that kind of colour story that I didn't expect to like as much as I did, but when I used this I absolutely loved the look and felt super pretty in it. So I've got like a video of me in the sunlight wearing this palette, and the shimmers are just so super pretty.
And there's the coats as well.
And then we've got an all shimmer palette and an all matte palette. So the all matte palette is the cinnamon palette, and this smells absolutely divine. I haven't used this one yet, I don't think, but this is a perfect companion palette for like the Rainbow Sprinkles palette, for some of the e.l.f. bites. Like, oh, I can smell the cinnamon from where I'm sitting. And with this palette as well, it's a perfect companion. Nice bunch of very usable mattes. I mean, you could pretty much create any look you could think of with this. The only things you don't really have are like greens and blues, but those aren't really colours that I go for that often. These sort of like autumnal, like warm toasty shades are the ones that I tend to reach for, so this is perfect. And it's also great to use in combination with the all matte palette from Makeup Academy because it just adds that little pop of colour. And then you've got the Rose Gold palette, and this is an all shimmer and satin palette. Obviously some of these shades are a bit more foily and a bit more textured, and then others are more of a satin, but this is just a great companion piece. You know, throw the all matte Makeup Academy on through the crease, and then one of these on the lids, and you're good to go. Okay, and then we have the smaller Makeup Revolution palettes we have. So starting with this one, this is the Revolution Hyper Real palette, and I bought this as basically a bunch of singles. At home I have a really beautiful collection of indie singles, and I don't have anything like that here. And when Makeup Revolution released this palette, I thought this would be absolutely perfect as like a palette of toppers, and that's how I've been using it, and it's really, really stunning. Some are very sparkly, some are more smooth, others work as beautifully as like an inner corner. I topped my Charlotte Tilbury Pillow Talk inspired looks on a budget with this orangey one here, and it just added sort of like another level of glow to the look, and then just really beautiful. Then we have this one that I used in that Pillow Talk look. This was actually given to me by my mum whilst we were here this time. This is one of the mini Forever Flawless palettes, the Forever Dynamic in the shade Eternal, and I used these 4 shades for my Pillow Talk inspired look, and I really, really loved it. I love the quality of these eyeshadows. The Forever Flawless palettes, the quality is outstanding. Probably wouldn't use the glitter, and it did kind of explode everywhere. I had to clean it up, but these shades definitely I can see me getting a lot of use out of, and I really loved that look that I got out of that palette. Then we have this one from the Butterfly collection. This is from I Heart Revolution. Haven't actually used this one yet, which is a tragedy because it's such a beautiful palette. I think I might actually use this one tomorrow for my going home look. this is such a pretty palette for this time of year, for like summer going into autumn. You've got these nice rich jewel tones and berry tones, and these shimmers here, these three here, look absolutely blinding. So really excited to do a look with that one. And then I have 3 of the mini I Heart Revolution palettes. So these are the mini match palettes that I have the blushes to match, the ombre blushes. And then this is one from a collection that they did that was like chocolate themed. So this one is the shade Chocolate Fudge, and it's just such an easy, like everyday warm toned palette, one that I could happily use daily and not get bored. Then we've got the Cherry Please palette. I used this whilst I was here this time for a very, very quick out the door kind of a look. I just used like this shade, and this one, I think, just for a very soft look to run some errands. And then this one I sort of bought as like a companion to the Chocolate Fudge palette. I thought these two would work really beautiful because the Chocolate Fudge has the depth, and then this one has the like transitional shades. And these middle shades in these palettes are supposed to be like out of this world, like stunning duochromes and things. So I haven't used these two yet, but like I say, I have used the cherry one. Then the only palette that I bought from the Monsters University collection, I was going to pick up a few of these mini palettes, the scare card palettes, but this was the only one I ended up getting. And I really like the formula of this. Even though the mattes look quite light, they actually pack a punch. This was the palette that I wore for my interview when I got that job. So again, this sort of holds a bit of a special place for me, but I really wasn't expecting much from it. I was expecting like a very soft, no makeup kind of look, and what I got was a really, really pretty eyeshadow look. I was really impressed with the quality of that. Then I have 2 of the mini Tasty palettes. I've got the mini Tasty Peach. Really pretty shimmers in this one, and one I've used a few times. And then the mini Tasty Avocado. I have the full size Tasty Peach, but not the full size Tasty Avocado, which is a crying shame because I absolutely love greens, but this is more than enough for me. I think the greens in here are absolutely stunning. Then I have one Disco Dogs palette. This is from like the Party Pooches range that they did. Unfortunately, this one did arrive broken, but because the shimmer is super soft and like pliable, I just pressed it back in. But I got this to use as like an easy everyday kind of a palette, similar vibe to like the Chocolate Fudge and the Peach Please palette, but the shimmers in here are absolutely blinding. But what I wanted this for was like the collection of mattes. Like this is just an easy one to grab to create like an everyday kind of a look. And then I have the mini Hazelnut Cream palette, another one that I picked up because it's just an easy everyday kind of a palette, one that you can't really go wrong with. No matter what shades you use, you're going to get a really pretty look. And then I've got the Chocolate Cherry palette, and this is more of a berry toned look, but I really like the collection of shimmers in here. Even though these are like pinky tones, they're like easy wearable pinky tones, and I think you've got, even though there's only 2 mattes, you've got 2 very easy to use mattes, and you can create a full look from this one palette. Okay, and now we are moving on to the I Heart Revolution Tasty palettes. The formula in these is kind of superior to the chocolate palettes. The shimmers in these tend to be way more foily and way more blinding. The only one that's sort of an odd one out is the Shrek Fiona palette. This is the By Night One Way, By Day Another. I thought this colour story was really pretty until I had it in my hands, and then I was like, I don't really know what to do with it. And it is one that I use kind of as a companion palette. I don't have enough mattes in here, and the mattes that are in here are very similar. There's not a lot of variation in the mattes. So the shimmers are beautiful, but I do use it with another palette. It's not one I would pick up again, I don't think, because it's just kind of an odd colour story. One that I do love, and I think the colour story is absolutely stunning, is the Tasty Coconut palette. I used this in a Get Ready With Me last year and was really impressed with the quality of these. The shimmers are absolutely blinding. And again, it's one of those colour stories that I think is really unique. Unlike the Fiona palette, this is a different colour story, but it's one that I look at and I can think several looks up in my head when I look at this, whereas I look at the Fiona one and I'm a bit like, I don't really know what to do with this. But this one I look at and I can think of so many ideas and I just want to play with it. I just think it's so pretty. In fact, I wasn't planning on doing this, but I think I'm going to ask my mum if she wants this palette. One that, oh, I can't believe they only had it as a limited edition, because this palette is stunning. It's such a special palette. It's the I Heart Revolution Tasty Pumpkin Spice Latte. It's an all shimmer palette, and these tones are just stunning. You know, perfect companion palette for like the cinnamon palette, or to use with the elf bite size palettes. I've used this quite a few times, and each look that I've done and I've topped with one of these shimmers, I've absolutely loved. You've got like a variation in the formula, like you've got some that are a bit more satiny, some that are super sparkly and creamy. And yeah, it's such a shame that this was just like a limited edition run, which most of these are, but this was really special. Then in the coffee range, I've got the Tasty Latte. Again, the quality of these Tasty coffee palettes is out of this world. I mean, you can just look at this and the shimmers, and you can see that there's just something special about the formula of the shadows in these. They're so buttery and so foily. The mattes are beautiful, they perform absolutely perfectly, but the shimmers really do set these Tasty palettes apart. And then another one, I have the Tasty Coffee palette, and this one I just think is so pretty. I think the tones in here are really pretty, and again, I think the colour story is different. You know, it stands out within my collection, it's set apart, and I can't wait to do a look with these coffee palettes. The pumpkin spice latte one I've used quite a few times, but the other two I haven't got round to using yet. Then we've got the pumpkin pie palette. This was in the Tasty Hamper set that the cranberry jelly face duo was in, and I bought that specifically just for the two palettes, the eyeshadow palettes, and I'm so glad I got it. I got it at such a steal on Vinted. It was all still sealed and wrapped, and these palettes are absolutely stunning. I mean, this is sort of similar vibes to the Toffee Hazelnut, but you can see the shimmers in here are just that bit extra special, super sparkly, and you've got a nice variation. You've got some purple tones, some red tones, and then all these beautiful like warm toned shimmers. Then a really great summer palette, you've got the Tasty Watermelon palette. This is another one that I sort of look at and I'm not entirely sure what to do with. I think it's because of the mattes in here. If I combine this with one of my e.l.f. Bite Size palettes or the Makeup Academy matte palette, then I would probably have an easier time, but using it on its own, I struggle because you've got like these very warm toned mattes and then these very cool toned like bright pops of colour. So it's a beautiful palette. The formula's absolutely stunning and the shimmers are really, really beautiful. The look I did, I used the yellow, these warm tones, and this shade, which is when I look at this palette, that's what I want to do. But these blues and greens and these purples here are what really set the palette apart. Then you've got the Tasty Pineapple palette, and this is just a really bright, fun, summery palette. Very bright, very in your face. You know, there's a time and a place for these kind of colours, and yeah, it's one that I could see me using for more creative looks when I'm just wanting to do something a bit fun and just play. But again, the shimmers in here are kind of something special. These like super chunky foily shimmers. And then you've got the large Tasty Peach palette, and again I think this is so stunning. Great for summer but also for autumn as well, because you've got these like deeper warm tones that you could create a beautiful autumnal look. And again, the shimmers in these are just, you can see how shiny they are. And then you've got these that are more subdued. Okay, and these are the last of the I Heart Revolution Tasty palettes. So this was from the Tasty hamper set, the one with the pumpkin pie, and this is the gingerbread one. And I think this is such a beautiful colour story. It's a Christmas palette, but this screams autumn to me with those greens and these like leafy colours. Really absolutely stunning palette, stunning colour story. Then I use this one this time. This is the Tasty Marshmallow palette, Marshmallow Wonderland I think it's called. And again, to me this is a companion palette. This time I use this with the Berry Bad palette from e.l.f., the little bite-sized palette, and the look was really, really pretty. I used this pinky shade here and this gold, and this was like blinding, like bright reddy pink. It was really, really stunning. Yeah, I think this could have benefited from some more mattes that would ground it, but as a companion palette it's really beautiful. Then I have the Tasty Popcorn palette. These ones I haven't actually used, and I said I was going to use the Butterfly palette, but I think I was going to use the Pizza palette tomorrow. We'll see how the mood strikes. But this is the Tasty Popcorn palette. Again, very different colour story. For me especially, like these purple smoky tones, and then you've got these really pretty like grungy greens, teals, and then this pop of turquoise. Really unusual collection of colours, but one that sort of, it stands out within my collection. Then we've got the Tasty Birthday Cake palette. I mean, look at the shimmers in these. These remind me of like indie singles, these shimmers do. How like PC and sparkly they are. This is one that I would use again as a companion palette. I need something to ground my looks rather than do like a full-on colourful look. I like doing like neutral transitional shades and then a pop of colour, and that's how I would use this palette and a lot of these palettes as well. Then we've got the Tasty Hot Dog palette. these two, the pizza and the hot dog, I love the colour stories. Again, it just screams autumn to me. These are like the colour of the leaves changing. I really do think it represents hot dogs really well, especially like this mustard shade and ketchup. You know, not what I think of when I think of eyeshadow. I don't think of pizza and hot dogs, but I do think it's an absolutely stunning colour story. And the packaging's just so fun and nostalgic. And then the pizza palette, this is the one I was actually thinking of using tomorrow. Um, Again, I just think this colour story is really unique, very, you know, wintry tones. Really, I just think it's beautiful. And I mean, look at this shade here, Slice and Marinara and Neapolitan. These just look absolutely blinding. I bet with a finger smeared across the lid, these would just be mind-blowing. But I actually think I am going to potentially use this one tomorrow. Now I look at it, I'm like, yeah, now I know why I wanted to use that one. Okay, and now we are on to my large collection of Forever Flawless palettes. Now, one of the first ones I got, this one was actually given to me by my mum. This is the Chilled palette, the Cannabis Sativa palette, and I've used this a few times, and I absolutely love this palette. Don't love the glitters, although I have used them, but the mattes and shimmers in here are really beautiful. They are more of a satin, like a more smooth, subdued shimmer. But each time I've used this palette, I've absolutely loved the look that I've created. Then another one my mum gave me. This is the Revolution Forever Flawless Regal Romance. And this is just a really fun colour story. Very summery, very bright. Again, the look that I created with this, I felt super pretty in. This is kind of like Bridgerton inspired, but the Forever Flawless formula is something very special. For a drugstore palette, I think Revolution had one of the best formulas. The mattes are super easy to work with, super blendable. They have a variety of the shimmers. They're not the sort of shimmers you get in the Tasty palettes where they're super foiled and blinding, but they are just a really great quality, high quality eyeshadow formula. Then I've got the Forever Flawless Optimum palette. This is one that I used and it blew me away how much I loved this palette. Some of these that I'm going to show you, I was going to pull into one of my looks on a budget videos, but unfortunately I've just ran out of time, and this was one of the ones that I was going to pull into that. It was going to be one of three that I was going to pull in to create a like a dupe in the vibes of. Leave me a comment if you can see the vision with this and the other palettes that I'm going to mention. But yeah, I use this in a look, not on camera, just on my own, and it's a stunning formula. It's really, really great quality, and the colour story is very different for me, being that more cool toned, more smoky. Then we have the Revolution Game of Thrones. This is the Mother of Dragons palette. I actually had wanted the Three-Eyed Raven palette, but I got these from the Makeup Revolution. I think it was like a 50% off sale, and they were messing up orders during that. Like, things were selling out before they'd even started packing, and the orders got so messed up and they ended up sending me this one instead of the one that I actually wanted. But I have used this and I do really like the quality. I love the fact that for a Revolution palette, it's majority mattes, and these are all mattes that I can get on board with. They're the warm toned, neutral, toasty browns, and then you've just got some nice lid shades as well. So when you look at it, it's kind of, whoa, that's a very bright yellowy orange palette, but when you break it down, actually it's a really beautiful warm toned, like autumnal palette. Then one I did use in a get ready with me this time is the Forever Flawless Utopia palette, and I was really impressed with this one as well. I was so pleased with the look that I got out of it. I felt very glamorous in this like smoky burgundy look that I got out of it, and I think it's really beautiful, really unique, having the blues and the purples, and they're like a warm toned blue and a warm toned purple rather than being very cool toned. So I really love that. This is another one that I was going to pull in with the Optimum palette for that dupe in the vibes. And I mean, this palette, I think this is so stunning. I mean, I love the artwork. I got this and another couple of them off Amazon for super cheap. I was not expecting to find them because they were limited edition, but I managed to find them and at a really good price. But this just looks so stunning, so super pretty. The embossings are so fun, and yeah, obviously this was a Halloween collection, but I just think this is beautiful. Then one that I got off Vinted for super cheap. This is the Friends X Revolution I'll Be There For You palette, and I think this one is a super glam palette. I look at this palette and I just think like going out vibes, and this is very luxe on a budget. This isn't one that I was thinking of pulling into one of those videos, but honestly, when I look at it, that's what I think. I think looks on a budget. This you could, you know, with a black wing liner or a brown wing liner and some lashes, you could get a really, really glamorous evening look out of this. Then another one that I managed to get off Vinted for super cheap. This was another one of the Halloween ones. This is the Into the Night palette, and this is so different for me. This is totally opposite to everything that I usually like, and that's why I like it, because it is so different. I mean, I'm so drawn to this half of the palette. These like very ethereal, like smoky mauves. My mom loves this palette. Every time she looks at it, she's like, "Ooh, pretty." She loves purples, my mom does, and she always has got her eye on this one. But this, I can't wait to use this sort of like when we come basically next time, because it'll be nearer like Halloween time. But yeah, this is just a really like very cool palette in more ways than one. And then one that I had earmarked for another video, I was going to do a video that was like a classic Laura look, sort of like my go-to if I don't know what to do kind of a look. And this palette is very much that for me. This is such a stunning everyday palette, but it could be super glam if you wanted to. This is the Nude Silk palette, and I just think this is so stunning. You know, you've got some beautiful rich looking mattes, and then a real variety of different shimmer and metallic formulas. And yeah, I was really excited to do that video, but like I said, I was just hit with so much inspiration this time. I've already put out 9 videos since I've been here. I hadn't put out 9 videos this year. So I'm quite impressed with what I did get to do. I'm just really hoping that I can carry on this momentum when I get home. Okay, and these are the last of the Forever Flawless palettes. Again, this is another one that I had earmarked for a looks on a budget. This is the Forever Flawless Timeless palette, and this is an obvious one. This is a dupe of the Natasha Denona Glam palette, and this is one that actually inspired that whole idea. This was one that I was going to do a looks on a budget with, and I was going to do this and a red lip, but time's got away from me, but I will definitely do that when I'm here next time, because this is a stunning palette. One that was given to me by my mom. Again, this was one that kind of was one of the first Forever Flawless palettes that I had, and it really did blow me away at how stunning it is. This is the Allure palette, which was the very first Forever Flawless palette, and this is such a gorgeous everyday, but could be dressed up. It could be my looks on a budget again, because it could be super smoky for the evening and very elegant, very glam, but you could also do something quite soft and neutral for every day. And the quality of this one is really great. They have improved the quality since this one came out, but this is just a very easy eyeshadow palette to use. It's not overly pigmented. The mattes are quite buildable, they build on themselves easily, and the shimmers are that more smooth satin rather than some of the more blinding foily ones that we've seen in these later Forever Flawless palettes. And please excuse me, I'm in a lot of pain, I need to move. Okay, and I'm so sorry if this angle's a bit off, and I'm sounding a bit breathless, but I'm in a lot of pain at the moment. But I go home tomorrow, so I have to get these filmed, or you're not gonna get on my Caravan collection is going to be unfinished, and I can't bear to leave it unfinished. So please do bear with me if I sound a little bit breathless, a bit pained, because I am in agony. But let's soldier on. So this is my newest Forever Flawless palette. This is the Dreamer palette, and this came out with their like 90s collection that they did. I've got it. It came out with the Hyper Real palette, the one that looks like some indie singles that I have, and I was so impressed with this one. I almost kept this at home. I liked it so much. One of my Instagram acquaintances and somebody that I watch here on YouTube is DW from Dub's Beauty Diary, and she shared on her Instagram stories that she really liked the look of this palette, and I did message her to say that this is such a good palette. You know, forget the fact that it's Makeup Revolution, it is a stunning palette. These shimmers are very, very special, and the look that I have created using this palette, I've absolutely loved. It really is special. I mean, you do only have like 3 mattes, but as a companion palette, it's absolutely stunning. Then we have, this was another one that I got from the sale where they were messing up orders. They told me that this had sold out, but it turned up anyway. This was just a lot that went wrong with that. But I'm so glad that I did get this, because this was one that I really wanted. This is the Plastic Boy and Gary Thompson, who is the Plastic Boy, his collab that he did with Revolution. And I don't think I really need to say much about this palette. This, like the Mother of Dragons palette, is just such an easy palette for me to use. It's filled with all those deep autumnal mattes, and I love the way he's done this with like 2 rows of mattes and then 1 row of shimmers on the bottom. And Gary Thompson is a person of colour, so this is made for people with deeper skin tones, but I think he just did this so well. I mean, it can suit, it's such an inclusive palette, which is something that Makeup Revolution sometimes is not very good at. So I was really pleased to see, you know, some inclusivity, and this just screams him as well, the makeup looks that he kind of does. And yeah, I think this is absolutely stunning. I haven't got round to using it yet. As you can see, I've got a lot here, and I'm not here all that often. I did lose my mind a bit with building this collection, I'm well aware, but makes me so happy, and that's all that matters. So this is the Revolution Desert Desire palette. This one I bought when we first got the Caravan, and I did it wasn't when we first got the Caravan, it was when we'd sort of got the Caravan all set up and we were having like starting to have holidays here, and I shared that like Superdrug haul. I did like a TikTok haul, and I purchased this actually from Superdrug, and I just think this is such a fun spring and summer palette. Nice and colourful, but colourful in a very accessible way. It's not gonna be like some of the I Heart Revolution palettes where I look at it and I don't know what to do. I look at this one and I know exactly what I want to do, because you've got the neutrals that ground it and then the pops of colours, and the pops of colours that you have got all work together very cohesively. And I love that there's this like very super pale light minty green and then this like matching shimmer. I love that. I love the fact that they've thought through and put like shimmers that match the mattes. And then this was one that I got off Amazon. It was one of the limited edition Halloween ones that I didn't think I was going to be able to get. And this was one that, again, really surprised me how much I loved the look that I created with this. These like ready tones pull very pink on me. And the look that I got was like a very fluorescent type pink look, but was so pretty. And I love the fact that you've got these deeper browns, the golds, the black, you know, it's a proper, it's like a vampire palette, which is perfect for the season that it came out. And yeah, I wanted to do a look with this time that was like vamp on a budget, that was going to be like a really deep smoky eye and like a deep burgundy lip, but again, time got away from me. But I'm keeping a note of all these ideas for when I'm here next time. And then this was a little collection of palettes. This was they did like a crystal collection. So we've got the rose quartz palette. Is it called rose quartz? Yeah, rose quartz. And these are supposed to have like pieces of the crystal sort of like in the shadows or something. But I just think this is a super pretty palette. Very easy, everyday kind of palette. You're not going to get a lot of depth out of this, but it's just enough. And it's one that I could reach for on the daily and not get bored. And then this was the third palette that I was going to bring into that dupe in the vibes of Natasha Denona. I will tell you what I was thinking now. I was thinking that with those three palettes, I could dupe the vibes of the Natasha Denona Metropolis palette. This is the Forever Flawless Aventurine palette. And I also thought that I could dupe the vibes of the original Gold palette with this one, because you've got those golds and those deep teals, and some like really blinding kind of metallics that you got in the original Gold palette. So those three palettes I was going to try and dupe the vibes of the Natasha Denona Metropolis palette, which is probably my all-time favourite eyeshadow palette. And then we've got the Amethyst palette, which is another one that my mum wants to get her little paws on too. But this is a beautiful deeper purple palette. This one combined with that Into the Night palette would be so beautiful. You know, the very like muted mauvey greys and then some of these more vibrant shimmers would be really beautiful. So I might do that when we're here next time. And then the very last palette that I have, which is an Odd Duck, it's one on its own. This is the XX Revolution, the Matrix palette. This is the Trinity palette. I have used this and was super impressed with the formula of this. Very different palette for me. I got it in that big sale that they were having. And the main reason that I got this palette was for the greens. Green is my favourite colour, and I just thought these beautiful greens were a little bit different, and I like the combination of the green and the purple. Not only is this like Matrix, but this also gives me like Beetlejuice vibes as well. So yeah, I was very impressed with the quality of this. XX Revolution is supposed to be the like higher end version of Makeup Revolution, and the products that I have tried from XX, I would agree with that, that they are slightly higher quality. But even like the packaging on this, it's a super heavy, sturdy palette. So yeah, that is all my eyeshadow palettes that I have here at the Caravan. I do have 4 little oddments. You will have seen these 2 in my haul video. These are 2 of the Primark multichrome eyeshadow pigments. So I have those 2 as my little single shadows. And then I also bought these from home. These are the Profusion Glitter Gems palettes. And I purchased these to sort of test the waters of using glitters, but I've since bought some indie brand pressed glitters that I have at home. So I bought these here to use here, and I was going to use one of these in one of my looks on a budget. This is the only one that I've actually used. I used it in a get ready with me for a day Christmas shopping, and it lasted so well. It was still on my eyes, adhering without any glitter glue until I actually washed it off at the end of the day. These I think are like Profusion's one of their biggest sellers. I would be interested in picking up more shades eventually, but this one is my favourite. I just love the light duochromes and the light holographic in there, although this is like the colours that I tend to wear the most. So that is all of my eyeshadow products.